in 1990 at Newcastle, refereeing mini ball as it was back then. So it was an afternoon thing. I spent too much time as a kid at the basketball stadium, and so I just sort of thought this was a good way to make a couple of bucks to buy a Coke every now and then, and that's where it all started for me.
Yeah, I started at Parramatta Basketball Association in Auburn. I started refereeing when I was 10 years old, and that was 2006. So you can do some maths. I think I was 4 when Scott started refereeing. And I just took up the course. They ran a course at the stadium. I did it with my brother. Sounded like something different, like a bit of a personal challenge, really. I got really fond memories of being in Parramatta. Lots of really supportive people that, I still, think about every now and then today. And it was a really great place to start. Similar to Scott, Friday night, Saturday, I was there every week for feels like half my life, just refereeing. I got paid $2 an hour, $2 a game when I started, and I was like a runner. So you ran behind with another referee. I don't know if they still do that. And every now and then they say, "Oh, you blow your whistle," and it was a travel. Oh, okay, that's where I started.
That'd be luxury. We just got thrown in. Just go and blow your whistle yourself, and you'll still get your $2.
Yeah.
Great, and you guys have come so far. So for the young referees on the Zoom, have you got any tips for them coming through?
For me, I think the best one of the best pieces of advice that I was given very early, because we had one of the country's great referees up in Newcastle, so I was lucky that I could tap into that knowledge base all the time, and his advice to me was always referee as if it's a grand final, and always referee as if someone's watching you, because you don't know who's in the stands. You might think that there's no one there or you might not recognize anyone, but there might be someone there that's just taking a little bit of a look, and you just don't know that. So you've got to approach every game with respect.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Actually, I remember that advice. You never know who's in the stand and who's watching, on that particular game. And these days, because everything's recorded, it's even more true, because you don't know who's watching at the other end of a camera with a lot of things, even just live stream. So that changes everything even more now. Advice for young people coming through: if you're doing this for money, then stop now, or fame or notoriety. But if you're doing this for the personal challenge or the friends that you will meet, then keep going. You can do this for a lifetime, essentially. So, and don't be afraid, I guess, to dream big.
Awesome, thanks, guys. Jayden, I'll let you go next.
All right, so Scott, our next question is for you, and it's from Keely. What inspired you to become a referee?
Thanks for the question, Keely. I don't know that I was ever inspired to be a referee. Once I started, I liked the feeling of money in my pocket as a kid. But as I progressed, as I found that this is something that I'm not too bad at, I just sort of latched onto it and did a lot of games when I was young. And it was one of the great ex-coaches of the NBL, Dennis Kibble, pulled me aside one day in Newcastle and said, I've been around the game a long time, and I think you've got what it takes. And I was 16 at the time. So I guess that inspired me to go further with it. But the real inspiration was just a love of the game. I was a low to middle sort of player. I was a dirty player. I was a cheat, but I just love being around the game, and that's sort of what's kept me in there as long as it has.
Thanks, Scott. James, I have another question for you. What is your favourite memory whilst refereeing?
Okay, thank you, Keely, for that question. Favorite memory? Many. You get a lot of memories when you've been doing it this long. Look, probably most of the memories are off court. It's, you know, the places you go, the people that you meet. Like, for instance, I got to go to Italy, my first international tournament. And before the tournament, I spent, you know, 4 or 5 days just touring around Italy. And that was phenomenal. Like, that's, you know, a highlight of my international career, just those 4 or 5 days. Like, I feel really, really privileged to have gone there. But, you know, if I talk about on the court or games, hands down, I did USA versus the Boomers at Marvel Stadium. I did it with Scott. That's that first photo, you know, that they showed coming in. It was like WWF wrestling, you know, going down that gangway. There's 50,000 people there. That was phenomenal. I never, ever thought that I'd do something like that in my whole life. That's without a doubt the highlight, you know, for me. That was just incredible experience.
Thanks, James. Eli?
So this question's from Catriel, and it's for both of you to answer. So I'll probably start with you, James, first. How do you select a mentor in refereeing?
Thanks, Catriel. How do you select a mentor? You just ask. It can be anyone, really. Probably somebody that you trust, I would say. Somebody that you already have a good rapport with is going to be beneficial. But I think probably importantly is somebody that you know will be critical but supportive. So someone who's going to be honest and say, you know, give you critical feedback, but somebody that's going to pump you up as well and reinforce, you know, the good things or encourage you. You know, that would be, you know, what my advice. And it also helps if they know what they're talking about as well. Scott?
Yeah. Just to follow that up, I've done some mentoring in the past, and when you're selecting a mentor, as James said, it does have to be someone that you trust. But you know, you need to be able to accept their criticism. A mentor is going to be probably harder on you than a normal referee coach will, because the normal referee coach will give you mostly the high level stuff, but a mentor is probably should drill a little bit further down as to, okay, you know, you've made an error. Why did you make an error? Okay, what could you do differently? What could you do differently from, you know, 20 seconds before the error is made? What can you do differently to avoid that, you know, even before the game starts? So in choosing a mentor, it's important that they do understand what you're trying to do. They don't necessarily have to be the most technically sound person, but they need to be the person that, as James said, will encourage you, but will also be brutally honest with you. And the thing that I find with referees, especially young referees, is that accepting criticism is something that we don't do very well. And criticism isn't necessarily you did this wrong. It's how can we do this better? And it's just the shift in mindset that I think as a group that we need to embrace, is that any sort of criticism is more what can we do differently rather than you did this poorly, if that makes sense.
Thanks, guys.
Alrighty, James, Brad asked, what was discussed in the daily referee briefings?
Okay, Brad. So I wouldn't say there were daily briefings. We did have, you know, probably mainly because there were there weren't a lot of games, but the people who were sort of administering the games were doing, you know, they were starting their day basically 8 a.m. in the morning and finishing at midnight, because there were 4 games every day and they were, you know, 10 a.m., 1 p.m., like they went sort of all day. So they had really, really long days. There wasn't really the opportunity to have meetings or to jump on Zoom. I think we might have done it. We did it once, maybe in the middle for an hour or something. No, we didn't do that. I'm imagining things. And really everything's covered before we get there. So, you know, Scott and I both went to the qualifiers, the Olympic qualifiers. Everybody else went to the under-19s, and basically all the work is done. And there were webinars beforehand. Everything is done before we get to the Olympics. So once we're there, it's just, you know, hit the ground and do your job. In saying that, they did send out clips and to reinforce particular things, and there was a document which they updated and sent out, not daily, but a couple of times throughout the tournament to reinforce some things. And to be honest, the stuff that they reinforced was things that were just really, really, really basic, like really standard things that you could reinforce at any tournament. When do you blow your warning whistle before the start of timeouts and quarters and things like that? Because they were some of the things that we just weren't doing right. So it was really basic stuff that's important to sort of, I guess, get a polish, like to finish, to sort of strengthen things up. Did I miss anything, Scott?
No. That sort of hit the nail on the head. At that level, sometimes we forget the basic things. And some of those reminders were just, guys, just do the basic things. If you do the basic things, people aren't going to argue too much.
Well, that's interesting and leads into another great question from Brad. James, what was involved in a typical game day?
Okay, that's a typical game day. Thanks, Brad. Well, let's say I had 5 game days. I was standby for 2 games and I had 3 games. So a typical day. It's a bit boring. I woke up, I had breakfast. Try and sleep as long as I can. I think like sleep's so important. At a tournament like that, I try really to maximize it. Breakfast, maybe if it was a night game or an afternoon game, then we'd have a game day meeting with the crew, usually probably just after breakfast, 15-20 minutes, really just to get together as a group. You talk about the game, but I think the main purpose is really to build that rapport with the crew and to start building that teamwork from there. And you sort of use the game as the sort of the material to do that with. That's 15-20 minutes, but then you're probably spending another hour just generally talking because there's not a lot else to do. So killing time, drinking coffee, that sort of a thing. Then, before the game, I guess for me, it's about, packing the bag and having that, if it's an afternoon game, sneaking a nap in if you can, and starting to prepare mentally. The bus, you had to leave the hotel, I think it's like close to 2 hours before tip off. And it was about a 20-minute bus ride. The first game, Scott and I were on it together. I was standby, Scott was on the game. It took us 40 minutes to get into the venue. So even though it was 3 kilometers away. Of course, you've got to take a group photo before you leave in your uniform. That was standard in the lobby. Security at the venue. Get there, relax, have something to eat, drink some coffee, talk. I can say a word shit, talk shit for, 40 minutes, get dressed. Getting dressed takes a long time because you've got to get, the microphone for the whistle and things on. There's a few things you have to do beforehand, check the IRS. So this is boring stuff. Talk briefly about the game, referee, debrief. Maybe an hour after the game, you do a debrief, which was supposed to go for 20 minutes, but usually went for about 40. Back on the bus, and you've got the rest of the day, whatever's left of it for yourself. But a game, it would take 5 hours by the time you left the hotel, and when you got back, that was 5 hours, just for the game because of the bus travel. I hope that answers the question. I don't know if it's interesting.
Thanks, James.
Hey, Scott. So Brendan would like to know, what was the most challenging aspect for you at the tournament?
For me, the most challenging aspect at this particular tournament was the amount of downtime. I was lucky enough to go to an Olympics before this with crowds. So with that came the ability to easily go to watch other sports, to just be outside and enjoy the environment. At this tournament, because we were essentially locked down, killing time became a real issue. And you might think that it's you've just got to sort of get through the day. But after 2 or 3 days, it's mentally draining, and then that sort of creates a physical drain as well. So getting through all that downtime was for me definitely the most challenging part of this tournament. I've never experienced anything quite like that. I've had downtime at tournaments and in seasons before, but this one, because we couldn't go anywhere, we could go outside of the hotel, but within a very limited area, or we could go outside of the arena to get food at the food truck, but that was it. So just getting through that was the toughest part, and a lot of referees that were there had the same issues, just because there's nothing to do. You can only watch movies so many times. You can only play solitaire so many times. At some point, you've got to try and find something to keep your mind occupied. That otherwise your mind gets a little bit soft, and that's reflected in performances as well. You can tell the guys that haven't worked for a few days, they're slower. Their reaction times are slower, and it's not through any fault of their own. It's just the accumulation of time doing nothing.
And a question coming from myself, were there any challenges that you found? I know you refed with these guys before, but being a native English speaker and then refereeing with people that aren't native English speakers, do you find any challenges at all with referees that have a second language as English?
No, not challenges as such. I think for Australian referees, we are criticised for the tempo at which we speak English. So we have to remind people from other countries that we speak Australian English, not English or American English. So it's not so much a barrier or any sort of negative. We just have to remember sometimes to slow down and be more clear. And you'll notice that both James and I are speaking quite slowly at the moment, because that habit sort of takes a long time to wear off after 6 weeks of dealing with Europeans and South Americans and Asians. We just sort of we get into a tempo and a rhythm, and now we're locked down, so we're not talking to anyone at all. So this is nice where we can just speak at a normal pace. But to come back to your question, there's not a lot of difficulty as such. It's just making sure that we understand the limitations of other people's understandings, and we know, and as James said, we know these people. We've worked together at least once, probably twice, maybe even 3 or 4 times before. So every now and then they'll just give us a quick reminder, hey, slow down.
Thanks, guys.
No, and if I can add, often one of the challenges is that they won't tell you that they don't understand. We could talk real quickly. That can be a challenge if they just say, yep, I got it, but actually they don't. Maybe less so with this group, but it may be at other tournaments that has been, where they just go, yep. Off the court, not a big deal. On the court, that can be really problematic.
Do you have any tips for when someone isn't communicating with you? They're saying they got it, but they didn't. Is there anything that you do to just make sure?
I mean, communication obviously is two-way. It's a full cycle. So it's not just delivering a message. It's ensuring that the message is received and clarifying that. So the easiest way is to say, okay, can you repeat it back to me, so that I know that you've got it. And if they can't do that, then they haven't got the message.
Sweet. Thanks, guys. Up to you, Jayden.
All right, our next question is for you both and comes from Eloise. What is your ritual or mantra before a big game?
I can go first. So for me, and it's probably the same with everyone, routine is really important. I wouldn't say that it's particularly a mantra, but I always do do things in the same way. One of the challenges with that is that sometimes you can't be too stuck with that, though, that because sometimes things change, and if there's a little change in the routine, you can't let that sort of throw you. So I guess I kind of like to do things the same way, but I'm not sort of stuck on it. You know, like I sort of mentioned before, for me, you know, the hotel room beforehand, just really little things like the timing of when I have my shower and shave and do my hair. Like these are really simple but important things. I spend a lot of time on my appearance before the game, checking my hair. This is stupid. Checking my hair, making, you know, I always shave. I always, you know, in the change room, I spend a lot of time making sure that my shirt looks good, it's tucked in. And I think that part of that is that sort of a ritual and a mantra that sort of takes away from the bigger picture or the game and helps me sort of focus on something else that's not really that important, but I sort of give it a bit of an emphasis. And all the referees are the same. Like maybe not Scott, I don't know. But he doesn't worry so much about his hair. But
you reckon?
But that's, I guess, yeah. Everyone, I think, is similar in that regard. So really, what do? You know, the timing. It's all about timing. You know, I don't want to. For instance, I don't want to have a shower and then get dressed and be sitting in my, oh, damn it, there's 15 minutes till the bus. You know, I want to be, you know, everything to the minute so that I'm not sort of wasting time or I don't want to have downtime thinking about things. I don't listen to music or anything like that, but, you know, I think part of it, like I said, is that if you get too stuck on something and you can't do that, then it might throw you. It might throw your routine out if something changes. In the locker room beforehand, I like to have a really relaxed environment. I like to joke around, to, like I said, talk shit, to be buddy, things like this, and not really think too much about the game until 10 minutes before, till it's sort of go time. And that, I think, helps me prepare. It helps me be relaxed, not worry about it. And then boom, once it's sort of 10 minutes, it's like, okay, flick the switch, we're on, let's go. Because it's exhausting. I think it's exhausting to be switched on, to be at that level the whole time, that I just try and control that all the way in so everything's really, really relaxed. I guess the other thing you can do is like mentally prepare as well. So, you know, watching the teams, watching, you know, games, watching plays. I watch myself a lot, and that helps me prepare mentally as well. I watch good performances. So I go and watch a video of when I've done a game really, really well, so that I've got that as that last, or what I think is good, I've got that as that last mental image in my head before I go out on court. So I don't know, there's no real big mantra, because like I said, if you've got something and then if it's like something, you know, a lucky charm or something, and it's in your bag and you lose it, that could throw you. Is that going to throw you mentally? So I try and keep my routine, keep those things simple, but they are important to me.
Yeah, I guess I follow more or less exactly what James does, with the one exception that I am very hard to my routine. And people who know me, people who have seen me when one part of that routine is not in place, know that I can be a bit of a handful when that happens. And it's just about as James said, it's the routine. Like if the routine's right, for me personally, if the routine is right and the routine, if every box is ticked, then I'm comfortable, I'm calm. If one part's not there, then you know, I worry a bit. But going back to some other points, like I do listen to music before I referee. People who know me well know that anything hard and fast is essentially what I'm listening to. And that's a mental release for me. Some people think, oh, geez, how can you listen to that and be calm? It just works for me. And you know, as referees, we find ourselves things that work to make us calm before a game, because the most important thing is to be calm. And I do talk to myself a lot. I talk to myself a lot on the way to a game, because generally if I'm coming down to Sydney, you know, I've got 2 hours to myself. So I talk to myself in the car about how I'm going to, you know, what we're going to do in the game, and just start thinking about the game that way. And I also talk to myself a lot out on the floor. So in the warm up, I'm talking to myself. In you know, when we're changing in the locker room, I'm still talking to myself a little bit, just to keep my mind active. For me personally, that's a big part of staying engaged, because if I go into the game too relaxed or not engaged, then I'm sort of chasing the game to get into it. Whereas if I've spoken, I'm talking to myself, the music's relaxed me, I feel at ease with the crew, then I can go out and I'm just ready to go from the start.
Yeah, I think, it's important to know and understand your partner's routines as well, and to try, and you can do that in the day of game meeting as well, like at a tournament like this, or you kind of just get to know people and what they want to do. And it's sort of something that, some people want to be left alone. They want to do their routine. They want to be, and other people like me, I want to joke around and laugh, but you have to be sort of respectful so that you can get each other to that, to that top level so that you're going to best perform. So, and we ask each other, hey, what do you need from me that's going to help you perform your best? And, we have those discussions as well.
I have another question for you both, and this one comes from Callum. What's your best Olympic moments?
Okay. My best Olympic moment is when I received the nomination to go to Rio. It's no question. To be lucky enough to be part of that group was, it's something I'd always dreamed of, but never thought that I'd get to. And I'm not ashamed to say, like, when that came through, I had tears of joy. I cried out of sheer happiness. And then you sort of look back at the history, and then to know that you're the first person from New South Wales to attend to referee an Olympics in, I think it was about 50 years or something. That was really big for me, because I'm a student of the game. I'm a student of the history of the game. So to have that sort of honour, and it really is an honour, was a really great thing for me. I guess if we sort of bring it down a little bit into the Tokyo, my best Olympic moment in Tokyo again was, as soon as you get off the plane, it's on, and you're there, and no one can take that away from you. And it's a really special feeling. And to put it in a context for younger referees, you'll strive to do certain things. You'll be refereeing in your various associations, and you'll get a call up to a country tournament or a state tournament or even a national tournament. And once you get that, it's a special thing. Like, you might not think it at the time, but it's a really special thing, because you've achieved something. And for me, being nominated to any Olympics, like, as I said, I've been lucky enough to be nominated twice, is the most special Olympic moment. But then, I'm a fan of the Olympics, so watching the torch be lit is a special moment. So there's plenty of moments, but for me, the most important, or the biggest moment for me is when that email comes, and it's the relief and the pride that comes with that.
And okay, for me, for sure, I share lots of very similar things with Scott. I didn't know that about 50 years first New South Wales. So I had no idea. So that's pretty incredible, and makes me think, well, second in 50 years, which I hadn't considered. I honestly hadn't considered. I thought, there'd be some guys in there surely. I've only been to one Olympics, and I guess getting the uniform. Look, I was the same. When I got that nomination, I wasn't expecting it. Without a doubt, I woke up in the morning. Actually, I got a message from somebody saying, "Congratulations," as a Canadian referee, and I went, "That's a bit. What's she talking about?" And sort of as soon as I saw that message, I was like, "Well, something's going on here," and I sort of, I had that feeling. and then opened the email, and I just saw it said, I don't know what number Olympiad it was. Scott would probably know, but it's in Roman numerals, so I don't understand. But that's all you can that's all I saw of the, either the email title or the attachment was, 36 Olympiad or something. I just saw that's all I saw, Olympiad, and I just went, like, I had the same thing. Like, I had tears. This is 7 o'clock in the morning, and I was just like, wow, it sort of knocked me sort of off my feet. Couldn't wait to sort of wake, my wife up and just be like, you won't believe this sort of thing. So I guess that's, something that I'll sort of keep forever. But then in terms of the Olympics themselves, like, okay, I had some good games. I had the Japan in the quarterfinal, 1 point game. That was a great game and a really great experience in that, but it's kind of like, that was work, so I don't sort of, that's work. I was working then. So that was great. But so sort of the thing that I'll cherish was, and I think probably people on the call will relate, was being there when the Boomers won that bronze medal. Now I try not to be a big follower, because, I try not to care about the Boomers, about the Opals, because, like, I've had to referee them before. So I can't sort of be emotionally engaged in that team and be like, yeah, go Boomers. And certainly, my friends are refereeing them. So I can't have that sort of bias inside. So I really try and switch off from anything related to them.
Yeah, I failed at that in the bronze medal game. I think James tested that. My phone might have left my side a couple of times.
And I was the same. Like, it wasn't until that moment, Scott and I were sort of sitting next to each other. Like, I couldn't watch the third quarter. I couldn't watch. I was like, I need to leave. Like, I just want to go and just find out the result later. And probably everyone at home was pretty similar. Like, I was emotionally invested in that, because I think, as an Australian, you're sort of proud of that. And that's where I took the refereeing hat off, and I was like, just put that Australian hat on. And that was like an amazing experience. One thing that I sort of think about with that is, I go, Scott and I, there's the team and all the team supporters, and there probably would have been 6 or 7 other people with Australian gear on that were there for that game. In 20 years' time, reflect back, I remember when Paddy Mills scored 42. I feel pretty proud or pretty privileged that I'll be able to say, I was there that day, and not many other people will be able to say that. Like, that's a pretty unique thing to be a part of. And I think that's something that I felt like more a part of something that was bigger than me, and bigger than, than sport, and bigger than basketball. And that was something that I'll remember forever and really, really cherish.
Alrighty, thanks, guys. Eli?
So our next question comes to you, Scott, and it's from Taya, and she asks, how do you maintain composure in your games? I know you said you talk to yourself, but do you have other little triggers and things to stay maintained?
It's a really simple one, and it's one as referees we just forget to do. You got to breathe. Take a deep breath. The game's not going anywhere. Take a deep breath. And when things are going haywire, it's natural for as humans to speed up, but every now and then we just got to take a deep breath, let it out. But the key is to let it out, because you take that deep breath and hold it in, you get tense. Let it out, okay, relax, then deliver what you have to deliver. So there's always, in international basketball, there are always really tough conflict situations, but the thing that I guess makes the difference is the people that can hold their composure, and the best way to do that is to breathe. I was on a Zoom call with some young guys from Newcastle last night, and I raised the same point. Every now and then, when things are going tough, just take a breath. The game's not going anywhere. Take a breath, then get on with it. Because if you're too tense, or if you're uptight in those big games or in those big situations, that's when the tendency to miss something or overcall something, when all you need to do is just be calm and just move on. I hope that answers.
James, did you have anything to add in terms of maintaining composure?
Wasn't prepared for that question. Maintaining composure. Look, I mean, that's you can train for it off the court. So you can practice this over and over and over again. I think, the work is done beforehand. I like Scott's advice there about, the game's not going anywhere, nothing's going to happen. You don't have to rush. And I think that's probably an error we make a lot. So yeah, no, I don't have anything profound to add. I'm sorry.
It's all good. I put you on the spot. Callum asked for both of you, is it different refereeing overseas to Australia? And then what are the key differences?
Yeah, I've had this conversation probably 6 times over the last 3 weeks. And the key difference, well, there's not a lot of differences. Like we play the same rules, essentially. But the key difference is in tournament basketball, which, the Olympics, the World Cup, they're tournaments. So they're very short periods of time. So in those environments, FIBA can just come in and say, right, this is how we're calling it for 2 weeks. All right. All players, all referees are all in the same place. There's no home and away. There's no different interpretations. There's just, this is how it is, take it or leave it. Whereas when you get into domestic basketball, so, from the NBL down, like the NBL, the Waratah, the Junior Waratah, you're dealing more with games over a longer period of time. So within that, fatigue becomes an issue. Personal interpretations become an issue. The game is evolving constantly. It's always moving. There's always something changing within the game. Whereas in those 2-week blocks or 3-week blocks or whatever, or the World Cup, which went for God knows how long, it's still just right. This is how we're doing it here. Everyone's doing the same thing. But when you get to domestic leagues, to national, state, whatever, the game is spread out. So it's difficult to keep a good rein on what people are doing. So just circling back to the question, there aren't a lot of differences. There are just some small differences in interpretations and what we probably what we call against what we don't call. I think in domestic leagues we tend to overcall, and that's necessary. Whereas internationally, the tendency now is to, and it comes back to the point I was making earlier. In every contact situation, take a breath first. Take a breath, because you might see that contact, and once you take a breath, you think, yeah, there was contact, but was it a foul? So internationally now, we're looking for fouls. We're not looking for contact. We're looking for fouls. So there might be some strong contact, but it might not necessarily mean that any person was illegal, so to speak. So I guess that's the key difference between the two, but essentially they're the same. You just can't. It's hard to compare the two, because tournament basketball is one thing, and it's the same at a national championship. Tournament basketball is one thing, then you go back into your domestic leagues, and it's the same rules, but it's just applied a little bit differently.
Look, I don't have a whole lot to add. I think the key thing is it different? Well, essentially it shouldn't be. We, like Scott said, we've got the same rules. Yeah, okay, in different leagues, there are some slight modifications. For instance, in the NBL, we have different rules around, like, for instance, the IRS. But the mechanics should be the same. If for, I think, elite FIBA referees, there is advanced mechanics, where they go a little bit deeper in what they say, but otherwise the mechanics are the same. It's the same. Like, it's not like there's a special manual that we're getting that's like, right, this is what we're going to do, and it's sort of just for us. The stuff that you guys have access to is the exact same stuff that gets reinforced for us. So the mechanics are the same. The signals should be the same. You know, everything should be the same. And this is something that particularly FIBA really, really want. They want one standard. They want everything sort of is, you know, to be like this and to flow down. So there's not sort of any sort of special rules or special things that are different that they say, you know, that's sort of secret stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Brilliant. Thanks, guys. I'll go to Jayden now.
Alrighty. James, our next question is from Peter. Was language an issue, particularly communication with the players?
Okay, thanks, Peter. Look, I guess it sort of comes back from what Scott said, you know, with tournament basketball as well, that there's sort of less time to communicate with the players. It's not like you're there, you know, game in, game out, building rapport, talking. So I would say generally, you know, in international basketball, I would say it's not typically an issue. Sometimes with some teams, it can be challenging. Sometimes they have interpreters. Most people speak English. And if they say they don't, they're probably just pretending that they don't, because, you know, conveniently, when they need to speak to you, they can. When you want to speak to them, maybe, I don't understand English. But then when they want to get their point across, magically, they can speak English. To be honest, the players don't talk to you a lot at that level, you know, and I find that with the higher you go up, the more professional the players, the less talking there is, because you're sort of all on the same page. They know what's going on. They know what you're calling. Same with the coaches. You know, so it's not, I wouldn't say it's typically an issue. People will find a way to communicate. And we do sort of all use the same language. But I think, you know, like what Scott said with your partners and things like that, sometimes people say, or actually every time you go to a tournament, the first joke, whenever I open my mouth is, okay, now can you say that again, but this time in English? Every time. And it's really like a bit of a, okay, kick up the bum. Hey, we're in international mode. I need to slow down and, you know, not abbreviate every word. So look, there's some challenges there, but not really.
I have another question for you, James, and this comes from Lachlan. Were you nervous at all, and how did you deal with it?
Look, normally I wouldn't say that I get especially nervous, but this is the Olympics. So was I nervous? Yeah, I was really, really, really nervous. More nervous than I've been before a game in a really, really long time. And that it actually surprised me a little bit. You know, but particularly my first game, I didn't sleep very well the night before. I spent a lot of time just thinking about it, thinking about the moment. You know, so yeah, I didn't have a great sleep, which, like I said earlier, like sleep's so important. You know, I tried to sort of do some sort of routines to try and help me sleep, and you get to sleep eventually. Yeah, and I guess, you know, how did I deal with that? Well, less is more. Go back to the basics, particularly, you know, at the start of the game. You know, my focus was on just doing those little things right, getting to the right spot, focusing on the mechanics, get that first call in and be strong, super strong, not over the top, but so that everyone believes you. Be strong and clear with your communication, with your messaging from the get-go. And the other thing I did was I acknowledged it. You know, I said to my wife, "No, I'm really nervous," you know, and that helped to sort of get it out there in the open. I said it to my teams, "Hey guys, I'm kind of nervous about this game." And that, I don't expect them to fix it or to help me, but it helped me just by saying it and acknowledging my emotions and what I was feeling. But yeah, no, I was definitely nervous because I was nervous because it's a big stage. There's a lot of people watching, even though there was no one there. And to be honest, I felt like I was, you know, like representing you guys. Like I'm representing a show. I'm like, I've got to put on a good show here. I've got to be good. And that, I guess, that fear of failure was probably what gave me the nerves. And it probably took until half time till I actually felt comfortable on the court.
Alrighty, thanks, James. I'll hand it over to Eli now.
Back to you, James. Our next question comes from Chloe, and she asks, what steps must you do before an Olympic game? Are there anything that we haven't touched on?
In terms of getting to the Olympics, do you think, or?
Let's go with that. Yeah.
A lot. Like actually, when I watched the men's gold medal match, I watched a lot of basketball. I sat there, and I was thinking, man, this is like the biggest ticket at the Olympics. That I think anyway. The men's basketball gold medal and the 100-meter sprint. I'm like, they're two of the like big events, like bucket list events that people would love to go to. And I was sitting there on the sidelines, and I don't know. I think Rhiannon's on the call. Actually, I posted a photo and I said, expensive. I got these seats. They're really expensive. And Rhiannon posted and said, yeah, it just cost you 20 years of your life. And that's what I was sort of tongue in cheek saying, like, this is, costs a lot to get here. But I mean, to go to the Olympics, well, let's work backwards. One, you have to be an international, you have to have your FIBA badge. I think there's like less than 14 in Australia. You have to be in the elite panel. There's around 200 worldwide that are on that elite panel with the black license. Obviously, Scott and I have that. And then you have to be one of 30 that they choose. So you got to have that first. How do you get to international level? It takes a really long time, but you have to be on the National League. Like, how do you get on the National League? Well, you have to work really hard and do well and perform at, Waratah or NBL 1 and those leagues. To get onto that, well, you have to do, get to Australian championships, and you have to do state championships, and you have everyone has the exact same journey that gets to the Olympics. Everybody started at a local association as a kid, doing it for pocket change, and then just went through the steps. And I guess, that's probably the beauty of it. And that's the thing that's kept me engaged, is that, there's always something just above to achieve. There's always a little milestone or a little challenge or a little goal. That might be, you're doing under 12s, and the next year you're doing under 14s. It might be going to the next national championships or the state championships. There's always something to achieve and to work towards. And really, I guess the Olympics is just the pinnacle of that. But it takes a long time.
And how do you personally, I know we discussed like the NBL having a couple different rules here and there, those type of things. And I know you refed in Lithuania before. So how do you adjust the different types of refereeing in basketball that you need to be doing?
Look, like I said, there shouldn't be any different types, where we all go from the same playbook. We should all be doing and do essentially the same things. And this is why language isn't really an issue between referees, because we all have used the same terminology. We've all got the same playbook, and we must understand and know this. And it's not new either. So it's not like coming into the Olympics, they said, hey, we're doing some things differently this time on. They've been reinforced over five or 6 years. So the question is sort of around adjusting to different types of reffing. You do not need to adjust, because everybody does the same thing, more or less, because we all work off the same rules and the same playbooks. And it's hammered in, it's reinforced that you must know these playbooks. At every tournament that we go to, at every webinar that we do, in every debrief after the game, it all comes back to, following what's in the book and what's written down and what is the protocol. So there's not really much room for personal interpretation. I hope that answers the question.
Awesome. Thanks, Rebs.
Alrighty, Scott, our next question is from Blake. What is the device referees have on their back?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. What it is, it's called the whistle control system. So James touched on it before. Part of getting dressed is we have to. There's a microphone that's attached to that little pack, and what it does, it remotely stops the clock when the whistle is blown. So the microphone picks up the frequency of the whistle and automatically stops the clock. So when you're watching games and you see referees put the ball in and they reach around their back, what the box does, there's a button at the bottom and it starts the clock. So we're essentially in control of the time. However, if for some reason we miss it, the score table still has control. They can still start the clock. They can still stop the clock. But all that does, it's our way of keeping control of the clock to avoid any sort of malfunction, any sort of issue with timing. Yeah, it's very simple. You know, if you watch the top leagues, the NBA has the NCAA, the WNBA, the Euro League, they all use it. They call it precision time. FIBA use what's called the whistle control system.
All right, thanks, Scott. Ryan wants to know, who is your favourite New Zealander?
It's certainly not Ryan, and if he's on the call, I've been thinking about this one all day. I'd say it's the boys from Concord Dawn, and he's a long way down the list, probably in double figures at least. Thanks, Ryan.
All right, thanks, Scott. Eli?
So these questions are for both of you. First, we'll start with this one's from Brendan. What was involved in a day with no appointments?
Be my guess.
Yeah, look, a lot of probably too much food for me, because when I get bored, I eat. Like, and it's it just is what it is. So the Uber Eats account took a bit of a flogging on days off. But as I sort of touched on before, it's trying to stay motivated, because there's a certain amount of, I don't have a game today, what have I done wrong? And that's a mental barrier to get over. So on a day where I didn't have a game, look, I'd go and do fitness, and part of our fitness, we had access to a basketball court. So I was doing shooting drills, which I haven't picked up a basketball to shoot in at least 15 years.
It showed.
But it's just nice to have that way of thinking again, to get the body loose, and to start thinking as players think. Because a big part of refereeing is you have to think like a player. If you want to be in the best position, you've got to think the way they do. And just doing that, it kept the mind ticking over, and it kept me away from eating too much sushi, because I ate a truckload while I was away, way too much. But the other thing, there's 30 referees or 32 referees and 16 spots a day. So, there's 16 people doing the same thing as you are. So, you catch up for a breakfast, or you catch up for a lunch, or you catch up for a dinner. It's still very much about keeping that team environment alive.
Yeah, I guess similar. I don't know, Scott didn't mention, but I watched a lot of the Olympics. So I watched.
Oh, yeah, that's that.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I watched
just skateboarding. Skateboarding was my big thing.
Yeah, I watched as much as I could. What sports? I watched everything. The swimming, the basketball, of course, the 3-on-3, the golf. I watched a lot of the golf. So I watched a lot because, hey, you're there, you're a part of it, and that's what everybody was doing back home. Obviously, FaceTiming my family. We were away, not just, I don't know if people know, but Scott and I have been away from home since the 24th of June or so. So it's coming up to 8 weeks away from home. So a lot of time just FaceTiming home and things like that. The training was a big one, and it was a good time killer because the bus trip to the training gym was 30 minutes. So it's 30 minutes there, 30 minutes back, and we were there for 90 minutes. So that's 2.5 hours out of the day, just training. It took a long time. It took a long time to do everything. The other option was, go to the arena. Go to the arena and watch games. Watch the games that were on. Hang out with the guys in the we had our own little room with some couches and things. We spent a lot of time just hanging out there and eating and drinking coffee. Nothing especially interesting. But that sort of makes up most of what the days were. Try and mix it up as well. Rick and Morty. I watched a fair bit of Rick and Morty on Netflix. I don't know if there's any fans.
Awesome. K2L has asked, especially regarding resilience, what's your advice to a young female official?
My advice to a young female official is to never give up. Look, I'm probably not the best to speak about this question, but I can sort of come from. I'm a country referee. Like I started refereeing in Newcastle, and I've always refereed out of Newcastle. So there are certain. There's certain adversity that comes from being away from a metro area. But I just want to acknowledge, while we're on this subject, we do have on the call one of Australia's finest female referees, Sharon Arnold. She could probably better answer this question, but I guess resilience is something that you need to have to be successful. And one thing that a lot of people don't realize, especially coming from, I like to call it the bush. I can't it's Newcastle, but it's the bush as far as you guys are concerned, because life ends after the Harbour Bridge. Is the amount of time that I spent as a young referee driving up and down the freeway. I would, from I think 1995 to 2001, I was on the freeway every Saturday night. So you get a sort of mental toughness from that. You get a mental toughness from the sacrifices that you have to make. From just belief is the key for any young referee, male or female. You have to believe in what you do. Sometimes you're going to get knocked back, and sometimes you're going to do the wrong thing. It's natural. It's normal. It's as referees we make mistakes. We're human, but I guess every referee faces adversity at some point. Whether it's male or female. And so to ask how do you teach a female referee resilience? I sort of look at it a different way. And I think every young referee needs to learn some resilience. And the best way to learn that is to reach out to people. Reach out to senior people, reach out to people who have been there, done that, reach out to your friends. Because that's how you develop a mental toughness. So as I said, there's some very fine female referees in this country, and I'm sure, I can't speak for them, but if you reached out to them, they could sort of speak to you more about from that perspective. I'm sort of coming from a very general, but general perspective, but coming from a country area, it's much tougher to achieve or to progress than it is for someone in a metro area.
Yeah, and look, there's not a huge amount I can add. It's difficult, obviously, being a male. I don't want to speak on behalf or for or anything for females. It's just not possible because it's different. I think with resilience, sort of to build on what Scott said, is you can't learn resilience from a book. Somebody can't teach you resilience. The only way you can learn to be resilient is to fail, lots and lots and lots of times, because that's what resilience is overcoming that failure or bouncing back from that, failure or disappointment or when things go wrong. So, embrace it, embrace when things are hard or go wrong. And that's what will build resilience. But I think, Scott sort of said some good advice, reach out to some mentors. If you're talking about like on the court, I don't know, how do you, I don't want to read into the question, but be stronger or something like this, or, maybe look at some of those female mentors for some advice. But the other thing is that now is a great time to be a female official because there are lots and lots of opportunities. if you look at the Olympics, there were, you know, for the first time ever, they put females on top men's games, you know, and you know, the guys did a stellar job because they're great referees. It's not a surprise, you know. People have known this for a long time, but they're given the opportunities now. So finally, some things are changing there. You've got female referees coming into the NBL. You've got female referees in the NBA. Now is a great time to sort of take advantage of those opportunities. So, you know, embrace it and go for it.
And just as a follow-up, our colleague, Miss Sharon Arnold, has just sent me a message just to remind all young female referees is always remember you are just as good as the male referees. You can't ever forget that. And I think that's where a lot of females fall by the wayside is they think that they're not as good. In most cases, I can assure you they are just as good, if not better.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. I'll pass you over to Jayden now.
Alrighty, the next question is for you, James, and it comes from Eloise. How do you stay confident during a confrontation?
Okay, there's a trick to this one. How do you stay confident? It's all an act. Everything you do is an act. You know, we're just playing a game. We're actors as a part of that game. You know, particularly at the top level, it's in some ways it's a little bit easier because you're dealing a little bit less with emotions. You know, when coaches or a player, you know, I guess blows up or there is a confrontation, yeah, sometimes it's very, very emotional, but a lot of the times it's tactical, it's strategic. They're acting, they're putting it on because they want to influence your decisions, they want to influence the calls, or they want to get a reaction, they want to change the game somehow. So it's not like raw emotion, which is really, really hard to deal with. It's strategic. And so when, I guess at our level, when you get that, well, you just act, and you don't have to be a big, strong, tough person, you know, in your everyday life. But when you're on the court, it's kind of like you got your Superman cape on and you go, I'm just going to pretend to be, you know, the police officer or whatever it might be. And you act all tough and you put on the face, and, you know, even if that's not you at all. And I guess if that's not part of your persona, and that's not my persona, that's not, you know, people who know me know I'm a very easygoing, relaxed kind of guy, then you've got to practice that. And you can practice it by watching other referees who are really, really good at that. I think Scott's really good at that, putting that tough face on. It comes naturally to him. So you can practice it. You can practice it in the mirror. You can practice it before, you know, at other games, before you get to bigger games. And then I guess practice phrases as well. So, you know, when you got confrontation, you know, if you've got like little phrases in your back pocket that you can pull out that you can use. So maybe something like, you know, just being, and you practice this in the mirror, you need to stop like that or something. Stop what you're doing. You know, you can practice these things beforehand. You know, you need to control your team or control your teammate, or you're hurting your team. You've got to stop what you're doing. You know, using phrases and words like that, something that works for you is helpful. But then look, when like Scott's kind of right, then when push comes to shove, you've got to deal with it. And we've got rules to do it. When it comes, it's got to come real sharp and real quick, you know, in that confrontation. It's got to be everything's like this. And then boom, tech foul, one shot, here we go. And then it goes up, ooh, it comes out of nowhere. And then you've got to go back down again, you know, back to normal. So you've got to control your emotions in that situation. So yeah, I guess if they are really emotional, that's really important, is controlling your own emotions, you know, using those phrases. Scott, you got anything to add to that?
No, you're right. You have to play the role, and there are, you know, people sort of look at me on the court. I'm very forceful. I don't take any guff off anyone, but in my normal life, that's not the person I am. I like to play. I still like to play that role a little, you know, just to mess with people. But I'm a very easygoing person. But you know, if push comes to shove, like I put my nasty face on and I just start handing them out like candy. But that's, you know, that's kind of what I do. I don't advise following what I do, but you know, if you want to take little bits and pieces of it, you go for it. But being in control of your own emotion, and again, we're going to circle back. If you take a breath before that technical foul happens, the moment might go, and you won't need to do it. But as long as you've got the confidence to play that part for 40 minutes, that's all we want. You know, you don't have to be that person off the court, but on the court for 40 minutes, you just have to be able to grab the game and say, this is my game.
And I think somebody gave me some good advice once, like a bit of an analogy. It's kind of like when you're in that situation, it's like the dog, you know, that's barking, you know, or something, or if you go to pat a dog, if you know, they can smell your fear. If you kind of go a little bit timidly like this towards the dog, then the dog's going to bark and try to bite your hand off or something. You know, when you've got to go in and just go in with confidence. And I think it's that act. You might, in your belly, you might be as scared as anything, you know, but on the exterior, everything's just cool, calm, collected. I'm in control here. I'm strong. And that's the thing that you've got to practice. And it takes a long time to be good at. And again, it's kind of like that resilience thing. You've got to put yourself, or you've got to be in that situation to see how you react and to learn from that.
Eloise also asked, what are your top 5 priorities in life?
Okay, good question, Eloise. That's hard. I'm trapped in hotel quarantine. Staying mentally sane would be number 1. Okay, no, serious. Okay, it is a really tricky question. You know, I guess on paper, you know, if I wrote down what my priorities or what I wanted them to be, you know, it might sound selfish, but I'd put myself and my personal health as number 1, because I guess if I'm not healthy and I'm not, you know, happy, then I'm no good to anyone, particularly my physical health, you know. So, hey, that, like, for instance, say that COVID thing's real, I don't want to get sick, because if I get sick, well, I can't supply for my family, you know, you can't work, whatever. If I get injured, you know, and I guess your physical health sort of feeds off on all those other things. So number 1 would have to be physical health, you know, which is sort of attached to social and emotional and mental health as well. I put my wife second as a priority, because if she's not happy, well, then maybe there's no point in living. And my son, you know, is a very, very close third, because, you know, I need her to help look after him. So she's got to be healthy, because then he'll be happy as well. So then work obviously is really important. That's a priority, because that's what pays the mortgage and keeps the wife happy. And, you know, and then I guess there's all those other things. Basketball's in there, social life. I like to play golf. I haven't played in a long time, but I guess nobody has. I like to ride my bike. I like to run. I like to swim, all those sorts of things. But probably in reality, what does it actually look like? Well, probably work and basketball are at the top of what, you know, it's not, are they the priorities? Maybe not, but that's where most of my time and effort is spent, particularly the last few months on work and basketball. You know, and then of course the wife and the son, and maybe the health and the physical health comes after that. But, you know, it's a good question. I don't know, it's a bit personal, but but that's, I guess, they're my priorities.
All righty, thanks, James. Eli?
So either of you can answer. I know we spoke about it just a little bit before we started, but I wanted to talk about where the referee stayed. So the first question is, do the referees stay in the Olympic Village?
Short answer, no. No, we don't stay in the village. We're not part of the athletes as such. We're technical officials, so no technical officials stay in the Olympic Village.
And what was the accommodation like, and the food as well? I know you were saying that your Uber Eats bill got quite high. So were there like certain places you could go to eat, or was it just like all delivery?
It was all delivery. We couldn't go outside. So at the venue, FIBA provided some meals, which you know, which they tend to do, you know, and the food was fine if you like chicken and rice for 20 days straight. And, you know, other than that, we had no choice. We had to order in, or, you know, or we had to pay for the hotel. I guess the thing that we probably should clear up is that we don't get paid to go to the Olympic Games. We get a per diem to cover our food and our, you know, any other personal expenses, but we don't get a cent. So, you know, that per diem, you know, we spend that on food. We spend that's essentially what it's for. So, you know, we're in Japan. I'm just going to eat sushi every day, like, and I'm okay with that.
James, did you have anything to add to that?
Nah, you gotta love rice, you know, but look, there was a little mini mart that was sort of a part of the hotel, and I ate a lot of sushi from there and a lot of potato chips as well. So that's a lot of potato chips.
Awesome, guys. Thank you. I'll hand you to Jayden.
All right, James, my next question comes from Keely. How much time on average have you spent on reffing?
Again, tricky question. A lot. My whole life. I've been doing it since I was 10 years old. And I've been doing something basketball related almost every week since then. You know, I had a year where I traveled for a little bit. I had a year where I had some injuries when I was around 14. But otherwise, you know, there hasn't felt like there's been much of an off season apart from last year when COVID hit, you know, for the past 5 years. When the NBL season finishes, typically I've gone to 1 or 2 international tournaments each year. So there hasn't been a lot of off season there for me. So look, how much time? Like a lot. It's not possible to quantify it.
That's pretty cool. And from Adam, why do you continue refereeing?
Look, I think it's probably, like I said earlier, you know, there's all the little steps along the way. That's the sort of thing that's kept me engaged and involved since I was 10, that, you know, every year almost, or every 6 months, there was like another little milestone or stepping stone or goal or a little achievement. Hey, I got my Y2. That was a big deal. You know, hey, I got my level 2, my level 3. I did 12s, I did 14s. I went to the national championships. That's the things that sort of kept me in, is those little milestones. And the people that you meet and the places you get to go are the things that keep me doing it now. So, you know, the guys that we saw at the Olympics, I've known them now for a few years. You know, I enjoy their company. I enjoy being on the court with them. I enjoy the pressure that comes with being on the court, you know, but, you know, being in that stressful environment, you know, is like, gives me an adrenaline rush. But definitely the friends that you make are the things that keep me in it.
All right, thanks, James. I'll hand over to Eli.
So Scott, Kevin asks, did you have any reservations about going to the games and the impact of COVID-19? Did that play on your mind?
Zero.
With a lot of the travel? Zero?
Zero. Never a consideration. Not for a second. No, like, it's the Olympics. You know, I'll walk over hot coal, I'll swim through lava. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? I had to trust that everything was going to be okay. I had to trust that the people in charge were going to have the right controls in place to make sure it was safe. And again, even if it wasn't, you know, my you know, people who know me know that that's not going to stop me. If you let me on the plane, then that's all I need.
Awesome. Thank you.
Alrighty, guys, this has been great. I know it's inspired me and a lot of others too. Our last couple of questions now. So, James from Catriel, what's the best advice someone's given you?
Look, well, probably I was 16 years old, and Debbie Kears, we all know, most of us know, and I don't know if many people know Rod Kent. you know, we had a goal setting session and we were writing down short, long-term and dream goals. And they both encouraged me to write down Olympics as a dream goal, you know, and they said, why not? Why not? What's it going to cost you? It doesn't cost you anything to write it down on a piece of paper. And so I guess the advice was, you know, really to dare to have that dream, to challenge yourself, to see what can happen. That's probably, you know, the best, you know, best advice there. Yeah. Write it down. What's going to happen?
Yeah, I guess it's similar to James. You know, I came through the, you know, the meaty part of the state program before those guys sort of got involved. And we had the same thing. I was given a form one day. What are your short-term, medium-term and long-term goals? And I had no problem with putting Olympics and world champion as my long-term goal. Like it was as simple as that. And, you know, and I sort of did it as a bit of a joke, but I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And, you know, the supervisor at the time just pulled me aside and said, if this is what you really want to do, we will get you there. Okay. So it's like James said, you just have to have the courage to say, this is what I want to do. There's no guarantees. There are no guarantees in this game whatsoever. But if you can say, hey, this is what I want to do, and you surround yourself with the right people and you ask the right questions and you're prepared to take the knocks, you're prepared to fight through the adversity, you're prepared to deal with disappointment, there is no reason you can't be here. There's no reason at all. But coming back, the best advice that I received as a referee was, you have to think about the game as though you were playing it. It's the most important thing, because only then can you appreciate what the players are doing. Only then can you appreciate, you know, what the defender's doing. And once you can appreciate those things, it's much easier to be in the right position. It's much easier to anticipate what's going to happen next.
And from Adam, this one is for Scott. You've been to 2 Olympic Games now, Rio 2016 and Tokyo 2020. How different was preparing for Tokyo compared to Rio? And how was it refereeing with no crowds in Tokyo?
It was a little bit mentally challenging, only because the experience of Rio was very positive. Being able to just go within the Olympic Park, and you know, you're just part of it, essentially a big festival for 2 weeks. You know, you can walk out into the middle of those people and just feel the atmosphere of the games. Also the ability to go and watch other sports. We weren't allowed to. Our accreditation didn't allow us to do that, but some very skillful negotiating and telling people just to walk with a purpose made it very easy for us to go and watch other sports. You know, I can say I've seen Serena Williams get beat live. I can say I've watched Michael Phelps win a gold medal. You know, I can say I've watched, you know, artistic gymnastics finals. Did I pay for them? No. Should I have? Yes. But that, you know, that's a different story. So preparing for, I guess, a lockdown situation, having experienced that, was a little bit different, because for me personally, the Olympic Games it's very special to me, even if I wasn't refereeing. Like it's always been something that I've been completely drawn to, and not being able to experience the entire aspect of it, it's tough to mentally prepare for. So I guess just getting used to the fact that, you know, we were going to be in a lockdown. You know, I'm going to be so close to these things that I can touch them, but I can't go. I mean, this was the first year that, you know, skateboarding was part of the Olympics, and for me, people who know me know that that's a big part of my life. so the disappointment of not being able to go and watch that live, the disappointment of not going to the surfing, the disappointment of not going to any of those other events. So preparing for that was difficult. But to come back to the question, mentally and physically, the preparation was exactly the same. It's for the game, for the actual basketball side of things. So nothing changed in that regard. It was just more around the getting used to the idea that atmosphere that's really special. If anyone went to the Sydney games, they know what the vibe inside the park is like. It's just it's a festival. Everyone's happy. Everyone's just loves to be there because they love sports. So getting used to that is probably the disappointing aspect, but you know, the preparation for every other aspect of what we did was the same. And I was in Taiwan just as COVID hit last year, and it was the first sort of games that had no crowds. So I was sort of used to it. It's different, but you know, it is what it is. Like you can't fight against it. You just sort of get on with it. In some ways, it's, you know, it's not so bad because you know, you can hear everything that's going on. You know, you can hear what your partners are saying. You can hear conversations with, you know, between your partners and coaches and players, and you can be switched on to what's going on. But you know, as referees, there's nothing better than that rush when, you know, when there's a big crowd and the atmosphere, the electricity in the gym. So not having that is difficult, but you know, the job was the job. Like we had no control over that.
So last question, do you guys plan on / have another Olympics in you?
You want to field that one first, James?
It's not up to me. You know, I don't do the nominations. I don't write them. I'm not the one who writes the name on the bit of paper. So I don't know. It's only 3 years away, which helps. It's been a long time to get this far. Okay, for me, everything comes back to short-term goals, chunking things down into small things. So, you know, that would be awesome, particularly because I feel a little bit ripped off. Scott just talking about his experience in Rio. I feel ripped off about that, you know, that it could have been, you know, what could have been. So that certainly motivates me. But that's so far down the path. Yeah, 3 years, that's a lot to get through. So for me, you know, I've got the Women's World Cup is in Australia next year, in Sydney. I would really, really love to go to that. So I'm not really worried or thinking about the Olympics. That's one thing that I'm thinking about and would love to go to.
Yeah, I guess I echo those words. Look, for me, it's a little bit different. Like I'm sort of on the downward slide of my career, my international career. Like I've only got a couple of years left, and which coincidentally, my last year of FIBA refereeing will be Paris. But you know, I have other goals to achieve, and I have the same one as James. Like the idea of doing a major at home is such a huge carrot. Like I've never sort of said, you know, I'd knock any nomination back, but this one, if that one came off, that'd be huge for me, you know, to be able to, because you know, family and friends, they sort of get left behind. They keep up with what's going on by Facebook and whatever. But to be able to say, hey, come and watch a game. I'm going to be doing a game, like an international game at home in Sydney. It's huge. But to answer your question, mine is very much dependent on what the mechanic says when I get home. That's the first thing I'm doing is going to the mechanic. It's the old body's not as resilient as it used to be. So we'll sort of just play that one by ear. But you know, as James said, we have no control over who goes where and who does what. You know, whether it's still going to be a COVID world or not a COVID world. it'd be nice. Look, who would say no? Like, let's put it that way. But there's so much water to go under the bridge between now and then. The short turnaround of 3 years makes it a little bit more attractive. If it had been 4 years, we'd probably be having a different conversation. But given it's so close, you know, I'm never going to say, no, I'm not going to try my hardest, but it's outside of our control.
And I think that comes back to a little bit with goal setting, is that's like an outcome goal. And that it's not, like I said, I don't write the names on a bit of paper. It's good. I can't control the outcome. All I can control is my performance. So look, if that's something that I really, really want to do, then I'm the one who has to perform to try and make it happen. But I'm not really worried about the outcome. I'm only worried about the performance. So I think that's sort of maybe an important message there. And then those short-term milestones to get through first. It's no use worrying about the Olympics. Got to worry about the next 6 months, the next 12 months. So it's important not to lose sight of that.
All right. On behalf of Eli and myself, thank you, Scott and James. Been great and very inspiring. I'll now hand it over to Steve.
Thank you very much. To Scott and James, thank you so much for this tonight. It's been absolutely fantastic. And I know for me personally, I've taken reams and reams and reams of notes here. There's one question that I had for Scott that I just wanted to follow up on, something that he said very early in the piece. And he described himself when he was talking about being a former player. He described himself as being a dirty player, a cheat, I think was the other term you used.
Yes, I'm the first person to admit it.
If I've written that down correctly.
You have, CHEAT.
I wrote it in big capital block letters. I'm interested in your view. Does being a former player make you a better referee?
It's not that cut and dried. I think it helps. Yep. It helps a lot, but it's not the be all and end all. You know, at the Tokyo Games, you know, there was probably 2/3 who have played, 1/3 who haven't, and yep. You know, you can see the difference between the not necessarily the book referees, yep. and the game referees, but there is a subtle difference that you can tell between the two. You can teach someone who's never played how to referee. Mm-hmm. Like it's easy to teach them. Having someone who has played, they just have that different appreciation for what teams are trying to do. Yep. And I think that's the key difference between people who have played and people who haven't. But you can teach a player how to referee. Players can be very good referees or very bad referees. People who haven't played can be the same, but both you can teach.
Correct. I absolutely agree with that. Absolutely. And James, you talked about, I think it was at Marvel Stadium, you said, big crowd, yeah. It was 50,000 people, you said. Massive adrenaline rush. And I have no doubt that being an official at the Olympic Games was a massive adrenaline rush. And then, Scott, you talked about, or you were asked a question there late in the piece about no crowds. So the atmosphere, if you compared that to your 50,000 crowd game to being at the Olympics in front of next to nobody, how do you deal with that?
Look, I'll jump. Hey, the 50,000 crowd, it wasn't helpful to have that crowd. I can tell you, I was pretty distracted. You know, I was pretty caught. That was a massive game to do Team USA in that environment. Like, I was not prepared for that. You can't prepare for that. Like, because it's nothing I'd ever experienced. So I was surfing that game. I wasn't refereeing. And it kind of helped that the stakes weren't especially high. It was an exhibition game. Everyone was there to put on a show. So, you know, I think I sort of didn't put a lot of pressure on myself to really perform. So I was just sort of trying to absorb it all, just enjoy the experience. Because I'm like, this is never going to happen again. So just enjoy it. Don't stress, don't worry. And I did. The Olympics, it was kind of easier not having a crowd because there was less sort of distraction. But to be honest, I didn't even notice that there was no crowd. When I was on the court, I was like in that zone, for me, and mentally, I tried to even just pretend there was a crowd. But I guess on the back of me, in the back of my head, I knew there's bloody millions of people watching this on the camera. So it did. And this, like I said, the pressure and the stakes were so high that it didn't phase me, or it didn't matter because of that pressure.
Yep. Scott, you got any views on that?
No, I agree. And I think the key to what James said is, you know, whilst there weren't people in the stands, you know, it's the most televised. It's the most televised sport event in the world. You know, so people are watching. It doesn't matter, and you know, they're watching from all corners of the planet. You know, for me, being an AFL supporter, being out in the middle of Marvel was probably, you know, how many times am I going to get to do that? So, you know, I sort of looked at that game that way. It was fun, but you know, just being out in the middle of that grand arena was, you know, something I'll never forget.
No, it would have been it's a great experience. I can speak for that personally myself.
Yeah.
One last question that I wanted to ask before, because I'm conscious of time. We're just gone past 8 o'clock. You both made comment about you know, the time in between games, the bored, you know, the potential boredom. I think one of you described as the boredom. Yet when you had the game coming up, people expected you to be at your absolute best. How do you go from being totally bored, knowing that you're about to be on that grand stage you're just talking about, James, where there's millions of people watching, and you had to be at your best from the get-go?
Yeah, lots of like practice. You practice for that, and lots of mental preparation.
Yep.
You know, to get yourself prepared. And again, for me, like I sort of said, it's all about timing of that. Like, I don't want to start that preparation the night before. That's too early. I'm going to be sort of like over aroused and thinking about it too much. So for me, it's all about just getting that timing right in how much I think about it, so that I don't think too much. But that, yeah, when that ball goes up, well, even before that, you know, I'm ready and I'm switched on. And I think it comes back to just those little check-ins, the pre-game meeting, watching the game, you know, the scouting, doing that. They all sort of add up to that final product. Going through the routines, talking to your partners. You know, the self-talk I don't do as much as Scott. Maybe I could do more. Caffeine helps, particularly if it's an early game. You know, I think you have to practice those routines and find out what helps get you into that zone, and then refine it, keep doing it over and over until you get something that works for you, because everyone is going to have a different game, a different plan.
So I guess it's just knowing your game.
Yeah. And having a plan and then sticking to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to both of you, can I say on behalf of the group, thank you very much, and congratulations on your achievements to date in your careers. And tonight's been very insightful, and I'd be highly surprised if everyone hasn't got at least one thing out of it. I know personally, I've got plenty. What I want to do now, I just want to do a quick shout out and for everyone to wish Helen Rosenberg all the best. She's off to the Paralympics, so we would like to wish her all the very best for her trip over there and all the games that she does. And we're now going to go to a slide. If I can get Jeff to go to a slide, we're going to look at, these are our competition winners. So all of you listed on that slide there, you'll be contacted. By Jeff, and we want to get some sizes. Basically, there's a mixture of sizes that we have. So first in, best dressed. Once you get your email, get in quickly and get your sizes to Jeff as quickly as you can.
Sorry, Steve, can I just jump in?
Yep.
Guys, thank you so much. From me personally, thank you so much for giving up your time to listen to James, who's got a long way to go in his career, and this busted old bloke who's, you know, falling down the backside of his. You might not think that you know, showing up to this means anything. The amount of messages that I got out of support while I was away, you know, I can only speak for myself personally. it makes a huge difference. You know, especially when on those downtime days, you know, just knowing that, you know, there are people back home that really believe in what we do, and they really support what we do. And the fact that you've come out and you've sacrificed your time tonight is testament to that. And that's something that I personally hold really, really close. And I appreciate it. And I just want to thank you guys. And if Ryan Jones is on the call, enjoy your Australian jersey, Ryan.
Yeah, I'll say thank you too. I'm not, people who are friends with me on social media, I'm pretty quiet on there then, but I posted, okay, this is my games, and, you know, the amount of comments and things and support, you know, I sort of was blown away. And I think, to be honest, that was one of the things that really motivated me to do well, is because I knew a lot of people would be watching. So I felt that within me, and I sort of took you there with the games and carried that. So thank you. And yeah, thanks for coming on tonight. I'm sort of overwhelmed by the amount of people that are willing to listen to, you know, to what we do, to what some things is really quite boring, sitting on a bus and spending time in hotel rooms, you know, but we're all referee nerds, so we all love this sort of stuff. And I guess the other thing I'll say is, like, if you know, hey, I got at least 5 days left in here. So if you don't be afraid to reach out to me on social media or things like that. I'm happy to talk to you about refereeing or anything like that. More than happy to help people. You just have to come and ask. I'm very open to that. I'm sure Scott is as well.
Yeah, and I think especially for the younger guys, knowing that you can just come up and talk to someone is a big thing, because, you know, naturally you think, oh, this person's not going to want to talk to me, and that's completely wrong. You know, we've got, you know, some knowledge between us, and we're more than happy to share that. And, you know, sometimes you'll get it unsolicited, but then if you see us, don't be scared. Like, just come up and say hello. Like, we're normal people. Well, James is normal. I'm not. We're normal sort of people. So please don't be scared. I mean, there's a couple of guys on the call who you know, they send me a friend request, and we talk about the game all the time. You know, and I'm more than happy to talk through it, just as James said. So please don't be scared.
And
can I just, sorry, James?
Apart from the people that are older than me, everybody else that's here, that's a referee, no matter what stage in your journey you're at, we were both there at one stage. I started at Parramatta as a 10-year-old. I was there. Whatever you're going through, wherever you're at, I can relate to it. Things probably haven't changed. So, you know, if you do want to talk, I'd be happy to spin a yarn.
Can I just echo those remarks as well? What I want to do is encourage an environment. We're only as good as the collective intelligence in our group, and you know, we've all got experiences, and, you know, you would have seen on the email that I sent out that I'm more than happy to be contacted by phone, email, text. I'm more than happy to talk to, and I've already had some referees reach out to me and have a yarn, which is good, and more than happy to do that as well. So. Can I also just finally thank Eli and Jayden for doing a great job asking the questions tonight and hosting the panel for us. Congratulations, boys. You've done a great job. And can I thank everybody for their attendance, and congratulations for getting on. What Scott and James said is right. You know, it's really good to get on and listen and share views, share information, and we're only going to get better as a result of it. So thank you to everybody. Congratulations.